Hey, aloha and welcome to Stan the Energy Man here on ThinkTech Hawaii. Stan Osserman here, coming to you live and direct from, again, from Blue Planet Research on the Big Island of Hawaii in the lovely location known as Pu'uwawā. And a great place if you want to really see how hydrogen works in a real live microgrid, this is the place to come, Pu'uwawā. But today we have a special guest today that I met probably in 2015 or so when I was working for the state. And he has a great background, but he's the honored consul to the state of Hawaii from Germany. And he kind of makes that link that we have, both economic and business link and government link between the government of Germany, the nation, and the state of Hawaii. So he's in that diplomatic chain, along the chain there. He's not the ambassador, but he's definitely in that same circle of folks. And he makes sure that we stay aware of what Germany's doing, and Germany stays aware of what's happening in Hawaii. And Denis Salle is the man, and he's actually done some really great networking opportunities between the nation of Germany and the state of Hawaii, and getting us together on sustainability and clean energy. So Denis, thanks for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Hi, Stan, the Energy Man. Nice being here.
Good. Hey, could you tell the audience just a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get into the nuts and bolts about hydrogen in Germany and Hawaii.
Sure. I took the position of Honorary Consul to Germany in 2012. We actually had diplomatic relations with Hawaii since the 1850s. And with a slight interruption of 2 world wars, we had continuous representation in Hawaii. And of course, back in those days, it was a binational relationship between the kingdom and the kingdom or the empire of Germany. So, you know, fast forward to 2012, there was a little gap, 7 years that nobody did this job, and they were very hard pressed to nominate somebody, and finally said, you know, if nobody else wants to do it, let Denis do it. So I said, all right. And I've been really enjoying this position since. I initially did this because I felt that I was losing my German, and I wanted to meet other Germans more regularly to freshen it up again. And then that actually did happen. So I'm very glad I did this. I now have a pretty good network of about 600-700 Germans that I have access to. There's about 2,000 to 3,000 on the islands with a German passport, and an infinite number of people who have German ancestry, just like maybe you, I don't know, Stan, if your Osserman is also of German ancestry. But,
my grandmother's German.
Yeah, there you go. So Germans, for all those who didn't know that, form the largest group in the US with 47 million people that can trace some of their heritage back to Germany. And here in Hawaii, my job entails, you know, everything that has to do with German passports, German notarizations, and other paperwork, but also taking care of German tourists in trouble, German nationals who live here who get into some kind of situation. So I actually had to hire somebody to help me because this is more work than I initially anticipated. And I'm now in my 8th year, and it's a lifetime position. I can keep it as long as I like.
Great.
Yeah. And then maybe I should say in my other life, you know, I have to make money. An honorary consul doesn't make an income. I'm an IT person. I work in medical IT. I have a company that helps physicians run their offices. So I do everything from network to configuration of electronic medical records to medical billing.
Great.
And yeah, that's it in short.
Well, I'd like to compliment you for the work that you've done in the energy side with putting together several great programs, bringing German companies to Hawaii to talk about energy, clean energy, sustainability, and things like that. In particular, I was part of the 2018 conference that you had at the East West Center, and that was really a remarkable. I'd say at least a couple hundred people were there, and very impressive list of companies there and folks presenting. So, could you tell us a little bit about that experience that what made you put those on, and is that your passion? Do you have something that you're looking forward to in the future for Hawaii and Germany?
Yeah, of course. This was the second energy symposium that we did, named Hawaii Germany Energy Symposium. And the idea was to bring German companies to Hawaii with products and solutions that may find a place here. That is funded by the German government. It's an exchange of idea program, if you will, with a clear intention to settle German companies outside of Germany. The reason this came about, as so often, is that I talked to somebody who knew somebody, and then an idea was born. I'm very pro renewables. I drive an electric car. I have solar on my roof, water heating, air cooling and whatnot. I try really to implement and live renewables. And so my heart was open before the idea was born. But the real reason why I focused on that was that I'm, as a consul, looking for something that brings the nation of Germany, as you said earlier, and the state of Hawaii closer together. And because of this unbelievable distance between us, I thought that renewables have a couple things going for them. One, of course, they are the energy solution of the future. Secondly, both Germany and Hawaii have the same goal down to the year. We're both targeting 2045 as the independence from oil or carbon emitting power sources. And as you know, Chancellor Merkel did a hard turnaround after Fukushima and decided to get out of nuclear on top of that. Of course, we don't have nuclear here, but for Germany, that meant a radical change in our energy planning. And so I thought, maybe Germany has something to give to Hawaii and vice versa. So that's how the 2016 conference came about. And it's interesting how the focus has shifted between 2016, 2018, and now 2020. Of course, I knew that there were a few hardcore believers of hydrogen in the state of Hawaii, and one of them is you. And there's a couple of others. I coined them the Hydrogen Boys, and Mitch Evan, and then of course Blue Planet are all early adopters, let's say, of this technology. So I made sure that hydrogen was well represented in the 2018 conference. And it really turned out that we were ahead of our time, because Germany at the time was not all about hydrogen. In fact, I had to do a lot of talking to convince the funding sources and the German-American Chamber of Commerce, my closest partner in this drive, to actually adopt the hydrogen idea for the conference.
Well, I'm glad you were successful.
Yeah, and I'm glad you were part of it too.
That was fun. And do you have any plans in the future? Like you say, we had 16 and 18, and this is 20, but I imagine with the COVID, that's pretty much killed anything for in-person conferences or symposiums.
The people in San Francisco from the German-American Chamber of Commerce had actually put in for 3 conferences and did get the grant for 3 conferences. So strictly speaking, we still have the funding for another one. But yeah, COVID is going to make that very tricky. I don't know if there's a time limit on the funding. I would assume so. So it might be that we have to do something online. And I did talk to some of the folks over there to maybe think about other formats. A Zoom meeting is difficult because of the time difference of 12 hours.
Right.
So if you were to do a conference with, say, companies from Germany in the, let's say, hydrogen field, you would ask them to do something in the middle of the night. And that's probably not going to happen. If we put it into a mixed format, maybe where we have some live elements and some pre-recorded elements, it could be almost like a TV show with a live Q&A or something along those lines. And I thought that is actually a format that hasn't been developed yet, especially not on a Zoom platform, you know, where you have Q&A video role maybe that you could use to show, you know, where it's at in Germany. So that's something they have started thinking about. And I wouldn't be too surprised if we see something like that in 2020, because the interest is very strong in Germany to build a state relationship that's tighter. It's actually a official strategy in Germany to seek out state partners in the U.S.
Well, I know that there's a lot going on in Europe on the whole with renewable energy, and in particular hydrogen energy storage. I've talked to some folks in Norway who are looking at North Sea wind and any of the curtailed or surplus North Sea wind power. They're turning into hydrogen, and then they're taking the hydrogen, injecting it into gas pipelines to move it to where they need it. And in one case, they're actually looking at making liquid hydrogen, and Kawasaki's building a ship that can move liquid hydrogen. And they'll use that to take care of some of their outlying communities. They'll take the liquid hydrogen and move it to that community and put it back into fuel cells and make electricity for when there's shortages of solar power or wind power.
I don't know if you remember Dominic from the Fraunhofer Institute, who joined our 2018 conference.
Yes, I do.
And it just so happens that he is on the team of the Fraunhofer Institute roadmap, the hydrogen roadmap. This paper here, I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah.
This is actually what the German government is using to plan out how to adopt hydrogen as part of the renewable energy market for the next 30 years. And he is one of 8 or 9 authors on that team. And we had him right here in Hawaii, you know, and he's one of the top hydrogen experts that are planning how could you take an entire country off of carbon fuels and transition them to synthetic electrically produced hydrogen.
Right. Yeah, that was actually a great conference in 2018. That really was a rather pivotal moment as far as I'm concerned with getting Germany and Hawaii together on the hydrogen piece. You had great presenters coming from Germany, and we definitely had some forward-thinking hydrogen folks from Hawaii. Good exchange of ideas. We both learned on both sides, and I think there's a lot of great things came from that. So thanks for the effort to put that on.
Stan, I would very much like to see you guys talk to the Germans on the other end. And, you know, now that we've all gotten comfortable with Zoom, I know you don't need any sleep. So if you wake up in the middle of the night, I would be more than happy to facilitate a Q&A with some of the top-notch people on the other side, and you know, maybe see if you know something they don't know, and vice versa. You know.
Well, I tell you what I could do is I could probably get 2 more guys to stay up till midnight or so, and the 3 of us, the same 3 amigos that came to your 2018 symposium, we'll be glad to sit up for an hour or 2 at some midnight and have a conference with you.
I think that would be fairly doable.
Good.
And so, yeah, that would be maybe a first step to a larger scale conference.
Great. Yeah. Well, we're going to take a quick break here at the halfway through the show, and maybe you and I'll talk about that midnight conference while we're on the break. So we'll be back in 60 seconds talking to Denis Salle. Hey, welcome back to Stan the Energy Man here, ThinkTech Hawaii. Stan Osserman coming to you live from the Big Island, and Denis Salle, the honorary consul for the country of Germany to the state of Hawaii, coming to you from Honolulu. And we're going to go a little bit now into what's new in Germany, particularly in the hydrogen realm. So I know that Denis had a little bit of time to do some research. Can you tell me some of the things that you've learned are going on over there in Europe, on the European continent, but in Germany specifically?
Sure. I think we left off with the 2018 conference, and for some reason, 2019 was the year of hydrogen, coined by many people to be turning the tide in the perception and the incorporation of hydrogen in the energy policy. Germany, I think it's fair to say, is leading the pack in Europe on that front. And they actually included hydrogen formally into the energy policy plans for the next, 30 years. They're planning out right now what the H2 demand will be in the next 30 years. They're planning what it would take to satisfy this demand and how to create this demand, right? The problem that we know very well, Stan, is that we have production of hydrogen and no demand for hydrogen.
Right.
So that thing doesn't work, right? You need both supply and demand at the same time, and it needs to be organized in a fashion that it's in balance.
Right.
Also, they're thinking about the technical supply industry that has to basically make hydrogen happen. So the electrolysis engine, basically, the machines that make the hydrogen out of electricity need to be built, and they need to be built fast and in large scale. They also need to be reliable and efficient, and so this is now a formal research project. So actual R&D dollars from the nation of Germany have been dedicated to finding production and management solutions for hydrogen. And this all happened in 2019. We also, I showed this earlier, we have the hydrogen, Wasserstoff is the German name, roadmap, which is the official planning paper. That goes through in pretty detail how to make it happen. And I think the sort of pinnacle idea that got it all going was that Germany has spent the last 5, 6, 7 years building a lot of production, electrical production. So just like in Hawaii, we all realized making renewable power is not a problem. We can make infinite amounts of electricity fairly easily, and it's just a matter of scaling that up accordingly. The problem that everybody is hitting now is that the grid can't handle more input and can't absorb and basically be the sponge of the system infinitely, right? As you get to 20, 30%, this is becoming a problem. And suddenly hydrogen reappears. And hydrogen now is the solution, if you will, to storage. It's the solution to the sector coupling idea, where you bring electrical and molecular power together and sync that up. And so now people are suddenly thinking about, could we not use our existing gas pipeline network to use that as a storage in the interim and beef up the amount of hydrogen that we can pump into 20%.
Yeah.
You all know that the gas company is putting in up to 12%, I think, hydrogen already, and Germany is trying to go to 20. And that is actually in, let's say, the next 5 to 10 years. They're trying to put that.
Yeah, and that's being looked at here in Hawaii as well. Hawaii Gas actually has put up to 15% in, which kind of was shocking for a lot of other gas companies to hear. But then again, our gas pipelines are a lot more modern. And that's a limiting factor. the gas pipelines, some of them are so old that they're not sure what the metallurgy is in the pipes. And you do have some issues with brittleness when you have hydrogen in the mix. That's why the percentage is generally kept at a fairly low level. But
Right.
here, I know that some universities, national lab folks here in the US have developed a fiber reinforced tubing, basically plastic reinforced with fiberglass or fibers, and can carry hydrogen at 2,500 psi and pure hydrogen, not necessarily just in a gas mix. And so a lot of those folks are definitely interested in moving along the same routes that the other pipelines go, but using this tubing, which
Oh,
is
yeah.
much more suited for pure hydrogen.
Right.
Another thing that seems to be happening on the grid side is a lot of the turbines that are using natural gas to produce electricity now. There are several major European, Asian, and American industries that are trying to get those turbines to run on pure hydrogen. And I've been told that at least two of the companies have succeeded. And their goal is to take that hydrogen in those pipelines and run gas turbines to make electricity alongside of the solar and wind and electrolyzed hydrogen, but all running off hydrogen so that we're off the carbon completely.
Right.
So there's some really amazing things happening nowadays.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that there is a sea change happening right now. And I think a couple of things happen at the same time. One is we no longer have a worry that we can't produce enough power. I think everybody's realized we can produce enough power on renewable tools. Not a big deal. Now the next step is the logical next step is storage and transmission. And Germany ran into a snag with the transmission because the power is created in the north where all the wind is, and the production is in the south. There's 800 kilometers in between that need to be bridged. And so they did start to build transmission lines above ground initially, and then people started to complain. And not only did they complain about the power lines, they also complained about the propellers. If you've been to Germany in the last, say, 2 or 3 years, you know, there are some areas where you can't see the forest because there are so many wind turbines in front of it. And there is a natural saturation, I would say, to wind propellers in the landscape.
I agree.
And I'm not even talking about birds dying in the propellers. That seems to be not the biggest issue. The biggest issue seems to be how much proximity there is between a propeller and a house that people live in. And that has become a big issue of policy in the country. And so everything is now moving towards wind parks outside on the ocean. And so then the transmission becomes an even bigger problem, right? So the logical solution would be to produce something where transmission is not as hard anymore, or even better, use the produced power right there where you need it, right? So these are things that bring hydrogen back in many different discussions. And I think one other big element that is new is that people are thinking of synthetically produced gas, the gas that comes out of power to gas production as one major component in industrial production. So to use the gas not to make it back into electricity, but use the gas to nurture industrial processes.
Right.
And that's, I think, where the emphasis in Germany is right now. To look at synthetic, renewably created, carbon emission-free gas to power the big manufacturing sector of the country.
Well, I think that Hawaii has kind of hit that saturation point on the visual side with the wind turbines. You know, I mean, over here, tourism is such a big part of our industry and our economy that when you start saturating our hillsides with wind turbines, it's a big negative. So we kind of hit that saturation point, I think, pretty early. And one of the things that I was talking to one of our state senators, one of the other things when you have these big wind turbines, they're all really tall to get up in the wind. And then they have these red beacons on top so airplanes and gliders don't run into the wind turbines. And those beacons flash all night long. And the people that have them near their houses complain about the flashing red lights. And also, it does make noise. It's not like obnoxious loud noise, but it's a kind of a humming and a whirring noise that after a while, I guess, kind of works on your nervous system. So having the North Sea wind is a good thing. Maybe having a bunch of wind turbines in your farm in the backyard, maybe not so much. But I think everybody's going to face that at some point when they go to wind production. That it's nice and it's clean, but it may not be the best solution.
Yeah, I think the location of the turbines is crucial. There have to be restrictions on the amount of turbines per square mile of land, especially in residential areas. I wouldn't go so far as to say that we need to stop all wind turbine implementations because of this. But, you know, a sort of wild hog rollout doesn't make any sense. And so I think Germany had to come to that realization. Of course, we built cars, we built machinery, heavy duty equipment and whatnot, very power intense production. And I think the German economy panicked a little bit when Merkel said, we're going to get rid of all our coal power and all of our nuclear power. And they just allowed the rollout of turbines, you know, at a very high pace.
Wow.
And because, you know, obviously wind is the one renewable that works at night, right?
Yeah.
And you need the stability of power to come through.
Mm-hmm.
So all of that, I think, led to the realization, if you can't have transmissions above ground everywhere, because the people do not want these massive, and you should see these things, they are easily 300-400 feet high.
Yeah.
They are as tall as a skyscraper sometimes, and they really dominate the landscape. And so then the idea was, let's bring them underground, and then the farmers complained because they emit heat, and they felt that, you know, that has an influence on growing crop on top of these. So then you have the next initiative of people trying to stop the underground. So, and all of that led to the realization we need another power carrier.
Yeah.
And
well,
what
this really means, Dennis, is we need to have another German-Hawaii symposium and talk about these kind of things. So,
oh my God.
Yeah.
Let's do that. And okay. I know we're at the end of the time. I did not realize it's already.
I told you it'd go by quick, and we'll have to have you back on again in a couple months, and we'll try and catch up on some of the other things that have been going on between Germany and Hawaii. And sincerely, I know I can get some folks that'd be glad to go on a midnight call with you anytime and do a Zoom meeting with folks. All right.
Let's do it.
Well, Dennis, thanks for being on the show today, and really appreciate it. And to all the folks out there watching, thanks for being part of our show. And until next Tuesday, Stan the Energy Man signing off. Aloha.